Hi. If you don't already know me, I'm Colleen from Twin Flame Disciple. That's a bit of a mouthful some mornings. Um, and I want to talk to you about the many ways that the Divine Feminine and Divine Masculine, but this is focused on the feminine. It seems to be that the feminine is the one that's out there seeking answers. So I'm going to give you my answers that I discovered during my journey that where I found I was sabotaging myself. And at times I knew I was sabotaging myself, but the energy had me anchored in that place and I wasn't ready to get out of it yet. So keep that in mind as you're going through and you hear these things and you're going through your journey, that when you're anchored in one place, that is where you're supposed to be at that point. You're supposed to be in that place. It may not be a pleasant place, but that's what you're working on passing through. You're taking that energy and say it's blue. You're working that energy until you can make it a soft, pale white. And that's what transmuting is. You're taking what already exists inside you and has probably since you were born, at least since your early environment when you were created. You're taking that energy and you're changing it to something else. You're not purging and getting rid of, per se, taking it out of you. You're retaining the same energy, but transforming it into something else of a higher level. That's what transmuting is. It's taking something and changing it to another form that is in a higher level than it was originally. So that is what we're doing during all those difficult times. And that when the energy is highly amplified in you and confusing and hurtful and just you're going crazy. That's what's going on. But there's ways that you can become aware of it, of how you're contributing to that craziness. Because at all times it's a choice whether you stay in that and work from that level or whether you want to try to transmute it and be proactive with that process. So there's some things that I found that I was doing, and when I was aware of it, I'd be doing something one day and I'd be in a frame of mind where I thought, this is not good. I shouldn't be doing this. But I couldn't get out of it. I would get out of it briefly, and then within a few minutes, I was back in it. That's when the energy is highly amplified. Now, we're in the Twin Flame community. There's narratives that are floating out all over, and we jump on the bandwagon. We adopt those narratives without stopping and always, always, always looking at all sides of it. When I was learning in the early stages of this and looking up twin flame information, I absorbed that information as well. But I also tried to see what my role in it was, because there's awful lot of blame, energy being put out. And when you're early in this and you're hurt and you're confused and such, you can get pulled out of what you would normally think. You can get pulled out by other people's opinions, other narratives that are out there. Now, there's a psychological phenomenon that happens with groups, and groups can be in your family, groups can be a club that you join, or groups can be the whole world, the collective, whatever you're tapping into. And social media is one of the worst groups because it brings so much information at you, and you're like this, trying to block it in some ways and bring it on in others. And the psychic phenomenon in group energy is that you might, standing on your own in your world, you'll feel one way and feel you're going to project yourself into your world in one way. You feel you know yourself, but enter into a group and you act differently. You can be persuaded to act differently because of the group energy and pressure. So be very careful of what you take in, because you can start up lines of narrative in your own head that you don't know might have been triggered by other people's words, but all of a sudden you've adopted it and you're running it. Now, in the beginning, when you're at the highest energy, you are very, number one, influential, and number two, you're processing dense energy. That's where you're starting at in this. You're processing that low frequency energy to transform that. So I can't stress that enough. Realize that you're processing dense energy. You're going to have denseness and negative stuff presented to you. As a result of that, it's not you. You are not the energy you're transmuting. The energy came from other sources, and it may be inside you, inside your head or your body, or even in your physical body, showing symptoms, but it is not you. Now, to get a handle on it, there's some things that I noticed that were, if I vowed war on it, I decided when these things came up, I knew they were wrong to be doing, but I was doing them because that's the level of healing I was working on at the moment. One of them was blame. When you're at the level first into the separation, it usually appears where you're blaming the other person for why you feel the way you do. They aren't responsible for why you feel the way you do. You are the only one who ever is responsible for the emotions and thoughts inside you. Now you're pointing blame, you're pointing fingers. They did this, they said that, it made me feel like this. They might have contributed an action to that you may have strongly misread and filled in the blanks on it. You filled in their intention. Their intention may have been totally different. And in the end, when you talk, you might find that out and feel foolish. I wasted 6 years fighting with you when you were wrong. Blame, pointing fingers, feeling that they didn't take responsibility for their part of a story that they didn't even know that they were part of your story. They were part of a connection, an energetic connection, but you, as divine feminines, I did it too, we make up a story while we're in that bliss state. We create a story in our head, and when it doesn't go down the way that we thought the story should go, we point blame. They did this. They didn't stick to the script. So you point fingers. Now, that's where you get to the stage where you're thinking that they owe you an apology, and they don't owe you anything, because there's always a two-way street. Every single one of the things I'm going to point out, you're doing it too. And do you owe them an apology? An apology would help. An explanation will help. Sitting down and talking about it will help. But you can't do that until you're both in a state where you can accept those words. When you're in a state where you're like this and repelling everything, and that's what you're doing when you're sabotaging yourself. Blame is a dense, low frequency. You are like this. Even if you're sitting there and you're saying, I love my masculine, I would take him back and we can make everything better right this minute. But you're holding the energy of blame, and that's conditional as well. You're making it conditional that if you blame them, how do they come to you in a state of vulnerability to apologize or to speak to you when they can feel it? Oh my God, when I'm around my masculine, I feel things. We don't have to say a word, but I know whether I'm accepted by him, and I know whether I'm not, and I know that he's feeling the same thing. The last time we saw each other, we were barely able to speak to each other because we were both in a state of blame and judgment and the whole thing. And that's the other thing, a state of judgment, the energetic state of judgment. When you're judging someone else, you're in a state of judgment is persecution. And that's nasty. When you feel that you can judge them as this, that, or whatever, you're judging them as being lower than you. Now that's where this crazy narrative of the feminine is so much further ahead of the masculine and more spiritually evolved. Well, if she's judging the masculine, she's not. She's putting him in a state that says, I know more about this journey than you do. And let me just come over there and fill you in and you'll be all good. And that's not how it works. They're feeling that judgment. And who's going to open up to you if they feel judgment from you? I have a neighbor who I say in many videos, I really like her, but she's 15 years behind me and she's quite raw, kind of like I was probably 30 years ago. And when I watch her in conversations when she's talking about other neighbors and such, I've pointed out to her when she's talking about a neighbor that she acts very nicely around. And then she talks to me about them in a different way. I've pointed out to her, that's very judgmental and that's not a good feeling. And that's creating separation. When you're judging someone, there is a wall between you. You might not know that you've put that wall there, but there's a wall, and they can't get through that wall to get at you while you're judging them and blaming them and saying that you have to take accountability for yourself when you're not taking accountability for yourself. By holding those two dense things, it's because you yourself are doubting. Doubt is the third thing that is so low and in frequency. Doubt has you where your energy is not in the connection. It's not in you. Doubt is hoping to get resolution outside of you. Doubt is that you're doubting the connection between the two of you. You're doubting the other person's ability to be able to do their work on their side of the fence while you do your work on your side. You don't have confidence that you may not realize this yet, but once you realize that you are in an energetic partnership and you're both there to do exactly what you're doing, go separately and transmute all that stuff inside you, you're doubting that they're going to do their part. You're doubting that they're out there doing their part. You're doubting that they are capable. You're doubting that they may even be a twin flame. You're doubting. Doubting is another wall between you. Let the doubt go, because it's a win-win situation for you. If you let the doubt go, what's the best case scenario? They appear one day and are able to talk to you in a way that they weren't before. Maybe not in the final way, but they are able to get further ahead, and you also are able to talk to them in a way that you weren't before because you've shed some of the doubt and the blame and the judgment. And you're doubting that they're capable and you're capable. You're doubting yourself. I realized a number of times when I was busy doubting and feeling like, I'm going to stand my ground. You got to do this, this, and this before you have access to me this time around. It's great and fine to set boundaries, but when you're conditional, you've set a wall. And what I was doing was doubting myself that I could go about my life and be very, very happy and be creating and just leave that door open. No wall, no wall. Just leave the door open for them to come through in whatever way they show up, and accept them in whatever way they show up, and release them again in whatever way they show up and want to go to. Whatever their decision is, it's good for you. Whatever they show up, it's good for you. It's good for you no matter what. And when they go away, you still feel good. You go right back to what you were doing, living your life and being happy. It takes a lot of work to get to there, but you have to work on the trust level, because when there's no trust in the other person's capabilities, when there's no trust in your capability, you create the judgment and the doubt and the blame. So what I found was I worked on the trust. I had to really work on the trust, that because I had to go far enough into this to see the pattern of it. And you'll hear me talk about patterns. I'm a pattern seer. I get my trust from seeing the pattern. And that's my validation that I am going in the right direction, because I'm seeing the pattern and I'm getting ahead of the pattern. Getting ahead of the pattern of the blame and the judgment and the distrust is by learning to trust. You stop doubting yourself. You stop doubting them. And that's one of the main things that I found helped me, was working on the trust level, because you have nothing to lose by trusting. You have a lot to lose by not trusting. You've got so many walls up, even though as a divine feminine, you're having it inundated on you, this theory that we are so much more evolved than the other one, and we're so much further ahead of them. That is a judgment in itself. That's judging the masculine as being less than, and they're not less than, they're different than. You are, let's leave our body and go around the corner and enter into the masculine's body. How are they viewing things? They're viewing you with doubt and judgment and blame, because you came into their world and all of a sudden their world went to shit, and you're at fault because you seem to be the common denominator in all of it. Their marriage, their job, everything went to shit because you came along, and it all stems back to you. All of those things come back, and they've got to have their time to go through their own processing to figure out, you're not around. You're not even there. And yet these things are happening. So how can they be that person's fault? And that's when their eyes start to turn towards their own path, and they're tackling their own blame and judgment and doubt. And that's when the trust starts to come in, that not necessarily in you right away, but in the fact that they are reading things correctly. When you're in the blame, judgment, and doubt, you're not reading it correctly, and you know it, because you can feel smarmy. When I felt smarmy, I knew that something was wrong, but I hadn't figured out. I couldn't put a finger on what it was yet. So these are some of the ways that the feminine, as advanced as the narrative says, is sabotaging herself. You have to go through the energy. You have to realize that it's part and parcel of processing that energy, but you don't have to take and project it outside of yourself. Accept that while you're in the energy processing that judgment period, that's part of what you're processing. And it's part of every relationship that you have around you. So I can't point fingers at my neighbor too much, because I have my judgmental moments, but that's where I've learned about judgment, and to see it and to nip it. Now, when I'm in the blame part, I pull that back right away, because I know that they did what they did because of the energy that I gave them. They didn't do it because they dislike me or hate me or want me to just buzz off of the face of the earth. They did it because they were overloading on that energy, just like I was. When I get to the doubt or blame or judgment, I see it now. I see it clearly for what it is. And I realize it's just a little bloop coming up. I don't know if I've already said this in one of the other videos, but I'm going to keep saying it throughout the whole thing because the analogy works for me. I learned it years ago, way back when I was, well, probably 30 years ago. I started realizing that when stuff comes up in me that's negative and I have to highly process it, like when my marriage fell apart. Picture this in the old camp stoves, campfire, or a camp stove. Those metal not thermoses, camp kettles that had a glass top, percolator. That's what it was. It was before you had fancy machines that could plug into a wall. You'd put it on the fire and it would heat up the water inside with the coffee grounds, and the water would eventually go up a tube, a metal tube, and bloop into the glass dome at the top. And you'd watch it and it would have one bloop, and 30 seconds later, as the water got hotter, it would have another bloop. As the water got hotter, the bloops came faster, and by the end, it was blooping like crazy. And you knew it was time to take it off and happily have your cup of coffee. That's what I feel is when you're processing the mental and emotional energies together, you'll have them come up, the dense energies, and it comes up and it bloops when it releases. And that's a fraction of a level that you're releasing, but as with each bloop, it's adding to the release process. And you just find that you feel better with each bloop. It just comes down to that. So when you feel better after something, whether it's something you did or whether it's your body and your mind and your everything about this knows more than we know, just relax and let it do its job. When you feel better about something, that's a sign you're doing something right. You wouldn't feel good about harming something. So feeling good is a real signal. So anyway, I just wanted to mention those things about how the feminine quite often is sabotaging herself while pointing the finger that they're the saboteur in the relationship, when you're both just processing energy. Nobody's the evil one, nobody's the enemy, and nobody's the bad one. There is no dark side to this, but be really careful about what you're listening to out there. Listen to only your own, and that's how you develop your own truth. So, hope that helps somebody. If you're sitting in blame, judgment, or doubt, and lack of trust, there's something to address and something to look at. Take a look at it. You might not be ready to tackle it, but you will soon. After that, we all get to that stage and we all pass through it. And we all come out the other side. And that's the funny thing about this. We go through all this where people have to make content to help the others coming through, but we all get to the other side. And we all get to a good place where you're feeling like, I rock. I run this world. I'm just going to let all the minions out there think that they're running the world. I'm the one running it. It's not ego. It's just feeling so bloody good and stable that you just don't need anything else to make you feel good, because you're doing it. And you do rock. So, anyway, that's enough for today. I hope it helped. Take a look. Okay, have a good day. See you in the next video.